Some portion of those young people didn't feel safe going to school, but it wasn't because of violence, although it may be bullying, but mostly it was just they didn't want to be around other people.
At the time that I was going to jail, there wasn't an exodus. There wasn't anyone coming in there to do groups. We just slept and ate and tried our best to deal with the time until it was over.
Loss, addiction, and isolation. For too many young people, this is the reality of their everyday lives. On this episode of Smart Justice, we're pulling back the curtain on the invisible battles our youth are fighting and the people who are stepping in to help. Welcome to Smart Justice. At the Juvenile Detention Center in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, kids arrive for all kinds of reasons. But if you listen closely, there's a common thread weaving their stories together: loss. Crystal Davis knows that feeling all too well. When her parents divorced, a void opened in her life. A void that eventually she tried to fill with drugs. By the time Crystal was 12, she was smoking weed to fit in. By 18, it was coke, meth, and acid. Anything to numb the pain.
I started smoking weed at 12. It's something my cousins were doing. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to do what they were doing. So I started smoking weed at 12, and I started drinking. And then at 16, when I got my driver's license, it was more accessible because I had a way of going. And so from 12 to 18 is when I started doing the hard drugs. I started with cocaine on my 18th birthday. It was a birthday present, some present. Yeah, so after that, from 18 to 38, I did crack, meth, fentanyl, Xanaxes, hydros. I tried acid, I tried shrooms. Basically, I would get high on anything just to get high, just to numb myself. Me as a child, I dealt with a lot of losses, not just my dad. There was times where he would be gone 2 years and I wouldn't hear from him. I wouldn't know if he was dead or alive. And I think he was in Arizona or something. But just like me with my kids, he always tried. He would show up, he would call sometimes, he would buy us Christmas gifts sometimes. And I was always a daddy's girl, so when he showed up, I always ran to him. As an adult, we got high together. My cousin was killed when she was 12 by a guy that was on methamphetamine. My uncle died in a car wreck because he was drunk. My aunt was murdered in Dalloway. They were drinking. The guy choked her and pushed her down the stairs. I had another aunt die of cirrhosis of the liver. I had another cousin committed suicide and jumped off the bridge here in town. I may be leaving something out, but I dealt with a lot of losses. My grandma died when I was 17, and we were close.
After 26 years of battling addiction, Crystal found her way out. And now she's helping the next generation find theirs. Crystal now teaches life skills to the kids at the Pine Bluff Juvenile Detention Center. But what she really teaches them is hope.
It's an honor. It's a joy. I love it. I didn't know, in the beginning, I didn't know really how it was gonna be because I've never done work like this. And so when I first started, I was trying really hard I would sit on the computer for hours, searching for lessons, because I really didn't know what I was doing. What is the reason you feel like you started getting in trouble in the beginning? What is the reason you feel like you started getting in trouble and eventually led to jail? See, for me, I feel like the reason I started getting in trouble is because I didn't have my dad in my life. And it really took a toll on me. So a lot of people say it's because they lost someone that they was close to. What do you feel like is the reason why you started getting in trouble?
My mom passed away.
Your mom passed away? You started out fighting? What is the reason why you started fighting though? Your brother? Your brother died? So a loss again. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. So the lesson that I brought for us to do today is called The new reinvented you. Don't that sound good? The new reinvented you. A new you. A new you. Because 2 years and 3 months ago when I left detox, I felt like I had been given another chance. I felt like a new me, and I just hit the ground running, and here I am. When you make the decision to change, don't try to change everything at once. It's impossible to change everything overnight. And I told them to think about the things that they need to change and just pick one and just change that one and then change another one and change another one until they're changing for the better. They're very well behaved, they're respectful. They just need somebody to care about them.
She sees their potential, not just their mistakes. She reminds them, your worst decision doesn't have to define your future. Crystal urges them to think before they act, to take change one step at a time, to believe that a different life is possible.
How do you feel about getting a fresh start, another chance at life? It's probably not possible to change everything. I just said that. But there are a lot of things you can change. Reinventing yourself is not just about giving yourself a makeover with new clothes and a haircut, but it has some things in common. First, it's about wanting some things to be different. How many of y'all want something different? Something different than this. Something different than how you've been living. Raise them high so I can see them. Okay, everybody.
Crystal Davis didn't just survive. She's helping others rewrite their stories too.
Everything that I did, all the drugs I did, and everything I went through, if I didn't use it to help other people, it would have been for nothing. It would have been a waste. But to me, I think it's worth it, everything I went through, to be able to do what I'm doing now and help y'all maybe not make some of the same mistakes I did.
Teen drug use is deadlier than ever before in Arkansas. Youth are using substances at rates that outpace the national average. And too often, the help that they need just isn't there. Right now in Arkansas, there are almost no inpatient substance abuse treatment centers for teens. If a young person needs serious help, the only options are often expensive, and it can be out of reach.
This really stemmed from the opportunity that came to us. You know, it was gifted to us about 6 months in. Deputy Secretary Janet Mann and I were working with some partners on some issues that were identified in our juvenile justice system in our facilities. We had a series of challenges and issues, and what really struck us was that this is a very small population of kids. We're talking between 3 and 350. We'd like that to be smaller, but that's more work on the prevention side. But this population of kids, they're in their community, they're in their county, the judge sentences them to us, and they come to us for their period of residential treatment, and they just sort of go, they're forgotten about, and not to us, but they're out of sight of the community, they're no longer causing issues, and so the community just sort of assumes that they're going to be fine. What we found is that there were some challenges and opportunities within our residential facilities that we wanted to start addressing, and we wanted to bring to attention, and we wanted the communities to re-engage with their kids that were with us for a period of time.
So as we were talking with the leaders around the state, one of the issues that was kind of preeminent for many of these children was they're using substances, and the substances that they're using are wildly different than maybe a generation ago.
Very different.
Stronger, they're more dangerous. And so the need was to provide additional services, substance abuse services for youth. And so I think since we did the original film for those episodes that are dropping off, DHS has made some investments in just that. Could you tell us a little bit about that, Janet?
Yeah, actually, if they've been committed to DYS, then they've been committed to a residential facility, but that is before any other health care needs. And so their substance abuse or their mental health needs are above and beyond that. And so really, if they've been committed to DYS for something by a judge, and it's appropriate for residential, but we really would like to see adolescent services be done in a different type of setting, the lesser setting, to be able to treat that as opposed to just being in a residential setting.
How do youth, if anyone's listening and they've got a loved one that's maybe struggling, how does someone help their loved one access kind of some of these services?
I think some of the easiest ways to do that is to seek out some help from their county offices. For DHS, there's a county office in every county. I think with getting some access to some of the benefits that we provide and then being able to work with different people in the community to see what kind of care they can receive.
And then maybe reaching out to their community mental health center. You know, there aren't 75 of those, but
No, there's 12 throughout the state, and so the community mental health centers are there. They do try to have some adolescent programs, but those are few and far between, and that's some of the gaps we're trying to fill.
Great. Okay. I understand there's some cottages also that you're investing in.
There's a lot more than just
Yeah.
looking at some, providing some substance abuse treatment options. And so, looking at Division of Youth Services as a whole, what our team discovered is we have opportunities to really sort of expand our reach and the level of service, the continuum of care. And Janet has been hard at work with our team on all of those things.
Yeah, so DYS offers residential care, also offers some home and community-based programs and some aftercare. But really, if you are in residential care and then if you don't need to stay the full time, or if you've served your time and want to work your way back into the community, we are piloting we're calling them cottages, and we're treating them as step down, so that if you've been in a residential setting with a very strict schedule and very structure, then stepping down to a cottage, which still has oversight and still has some guardrails, but then eases you back into the community. And the goal is to have the kids that have been committed do that when it's appropriate, and then work into the home and community base and the aftercare programs. The goal is to not have them come back to DYS. So, easing them out of the system from their initial engagement.
Support for Smart Justice is provided by Restore Hope, dedicated to empowering communities by offering the coordination and tools needed to support the vulnerable. Learn how you can bring these tools to your community at restorehope.io.
Across Arkansas, juvenile court judges are sounding the alarm. The problem isn't just crime, it's isolation, it's addiction, and it's despair. And it's hitting kids younger than ever before. Judge Adam Weeks sees it firsthand in Northeast Arkansas. Since the pandemic, young people aren't just struggling, they're drowning in loneliness, mental health crisis, and in addiction.
It's pretty clear that the pandemic took a real toll on our young people, specifically their mental health. They are showing up at court in crisis, getting assessed, and going acute. And that is just a constant refrain in all of my cases involving young people. I'm also seeing a tremendous amount of drug use, and the attitudes about specifically marijuana and the acceptance of it seem to have created just a huge uptick in mainly vaping. Young people they're not rolling up marijuana like people used to. They have vape pens. They're taking them to school, which tells me that they're smoking marijuana in class at school and sitting there not learning, or I have to assume they're not learning.
Vape pens filled with a highly concentrated marijuana wax, sometimes 90% THC, have replaced the old school weed. And what once seemed like harmless experimentation is now leading kids straight into crisis.
I don't pretend to know what marijuana is anymore. I have a case involving a family that had over 100 tins of this wax that I now know you use a bong to smoke. You take this bong and you heat up this metal thing with a torch, and you take a little dab of that wax and you put it on that metal that's been heated up, and it vaporizes, and that's 90-something% THC. the medical marijuana that first came to the state of Arkansas was around 20 to 25%. Well, this is in the 90s. What does that do? I don't know. So I think that among the social work community, the law enforcement community, and just the general population, they're all thinking it's the devil's lettuce from high school. It's not. I don't even know what it is. And now we've got folks that show up looking like zombies, and they're like, well, it's just marijuana. Well, that's not your mama's marijuana.
In Judge Weeks' courtroom, they aren't showing up with minor behavior problems. They're showing up broken, and too often, there's no system ready to catch them. It's not just drug use. It's absenteeism. It's young people who often don't believe school, work, or even real human connection is a priority.
Families' attitude about going to school is totally different. I guess being out during COVID reconfigured their attitudes about whether school is necessary. Because when I was growing up, my mother loved us going to school. And now a kid wants to stay home, they just let them do it. They just really did. And so the number of kids coming into Finn's court on truancy is really through the roof. And I'm not just talking about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 absences, 20, 30 absences. And so I don't know what the end game is for that, but the trend line doesn't seem to be relaxing. It's just getting worse, if anything. They're just more isolated. They're not going and getting their driver's license right out. They're not getting their permit at 14, their driver's license at 16. They're not driven to get out and connect with each other and the world because of those phones, which have fundamentally changed things. But the desire for connection is still there. And so the answer lies in providing opportunities to engage these young people on a community level, not an internet level, by a person-to-person, real thing level.
When it comes to justice for young people, mistakes just don't hurt today. They echo across a lifetime.
My first year on the bench to the RISE conference in Washington, D.C., and I was there for drug court, and this was a national convention for drug court professionals, and I made my way to the wrong room. And like a happy accident, I found myself in this room where they were talking about dependency neglect, and they were talking about things that we were doing in drug court, but they were doing it in dependency neglect court. They were treating substance use disorder. They were connecting families to resources, and they were creating a can-do attitude in these courts that were common in other parts of the country. So, of course, that meant that I scrapped all of the other classes that I was going to go to, and I just exclusively started going to those because I didn't know anything about it. And so then I came back and I started asking questions in regard to the types of cases that I had on my docket in dependency neglect court, and found that 72% of the removals were primarily removed because of drug use. And so if we were going to successfully reunify our families, it was pretty clear to me that we had to address drug use. But we weren't doing it. In fact, if we wanted to create a system, in my opinion, that was not going to address the needs and the services for folks with substance use disorder, I think we've done a pretty good job of creating it because of the timeline and the amount of gaps between court appearances. It was feeding the drug addiction in the sense that these folks weren't doing anything until the last minute, and then we were slow walking them to a termination. And my reunification rate was in the 30s, and so I set about to write a federal grant to start a family-centered treatment court, got permission from the Arkansas Supreme Court to launch a pilot program, and successfully secured that grant. And we've been doing it for 2 years, a year and a half, I'd say. And the first year, we successfully prevented 27 children from going into foster care.
But the work isn't finished. Resources are still uneven. And when systems fail, it's not just numbers we lose. It's futures, it's families, it's hope. Coming up on the next episode of Smart Justice.
When we start putting kids in solitary day in and day out, that is detrimental to their mental health. It's counterproductive. And then we take away their education, their access to education. It's a recipe for disaster.
Smart Justice is a production of Restore Hope, a software and services organization providing proven community-driven approaches leading to better outcomes for at-risk families. Executive Director of Restore Hope is Paul Chapman, with Associate Directors Karen Phillips and Sarah Littleton. Visit smartjustice.org for more coverage on justice system-related issues. There you can also sign up for our weekly newsletter so you never miss the latest headlines. And please subscribe to this channel and leave us a rating and review.